And next we have Professor Daniel HoSang. He's an associate professor of ethnicity, race, and migration and American studies. He also holds a secondary appointment in the Department of Political Science and serves on the Education Studies Advisory Committee. He's the author, the co-author, and the co-editor of numerous publications related to ethnic studies and racial justice. And through the Yale-New Haven Teachers Institute, he has taught seminars for K-12 public school teachers and on anti-racist curriculum and pedagogy, and works with teachers and youth organizing groups in Connecticut on teaching about racism and racial justice in the K-12 curriculum through the Anti-Racist Teaching and Learning Collective. This year, he will be leading a seminar titled Ethnic Studies, Theory, Practice, and Pedagogy. Dan?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much, Jason. I just want to echo Anne's, like so much of this seminar and this program is about the connections we make with each other. We usually have this lovely reception at this time, which I feel like we need now more than ever. So I just want to echo the appreciation. I know this week in particular is just so unbelievably disorienting. And the fact that people are making time to think about how they might engage with others, this summer and strengthening their own teaching, learning, and practice, I find really, really just gratifying and energizing. So I just always want to thank Jim, Jason, Carol, Stephanie for just all the work and kind of keeping us together during these times and those fantastic seminars that Anne and Jill just talked to us about. And then a quick hello to Cheryl, Lauren, Felicia, Amy, and Carol again for just brilliant teachers who I've had the chance to work with in the past. So I'll say the seminar that I'm going to coordinate and facilitate and lead this time is Ethnic Studies, Theory, Practice, and Pedagogy. I want to say a little bit about what ethnic studies is as a field, how I'm kind of conceptualizing it, what we'll do in the seminar, kind of who it's for, and then really look forward to questions. And so, I think just one way to think about ethnic studies, at this moment, is it allows us to think about very, very basic questions, like what is education for? What connection does it have with social power and with inequality? And at this moment, schools and social crises, they're so intimately linked. There's no sense of schools outside of it. We're embedded, we're in it. And that, speaks to these questions of why all of us became educators in the first place, right? What's our role in helping to resolve some sort of possible life for everyone? So how can schools and classrooms and education systems actually be kind of central sites of reconstruction, reimagining something that could kind of save and preserve human life. So I think that's broadly what ethnic studies is interested in. We might more specifically trace it to the social movements of especially the late 1960s and early 1970s, as parents and neighbors and churches and their faith leaders, when they thought about housing and law enforcement and employment and transportation, all these areas they wanted to address, they also thought about schools and not just desegregating them, but saying, look, the curriculum, the way the school is organized, that's also a site. It can be a site of domination and legitimating people's dispossession, they're legitimating inequality, but it can be the site of so much else. It can be the site of so much other possibility. So ethnic studies really comes from that sense about laying claim to the production of knowledge, to thinking and learning and teaching and growing. And in that sense, I see it not as it's often characterized as something like just about oppression, but about what are the resources we have to build alternatives together. It has a longer history that I'll just mention quickly. I think, the first study, Association for the Study of African American History, is founded by Carter G. Woodson in 1915. So think about that, at the height of Jim Crow across the South and segregation in so many areas of the North. Folks were already thinking about these areas. How do we transform curriculum and teaching and learning and center not just contributions, but whole alternative ways of knowing and being. And there's traditions in Mexican American communities, Puerto Rican communities, Japanese American language communities of laying claim to schools as sites of new collective possibility. And then, as you know, many of the debates we've heard across the last 12 months, for better or worse, around anti-racist education and critical race theory and the role of gender and sexuality in our curriculum and Native studies. They have this long, long history. So that's broadly what the seminar is going to engage with. So ethnic studies can refer to a set of classes, actually like an interdisciplinary subject area that involves history, it involves literature, media, fine arts, humanities, certainly several elements in like the life sciences and the natural sciences. It cuts across every level of the curriculum, elementary, intermediate, and high school. But it's also really an approach to teaching and learning that thinks about students as intellectuals, who co-create spaces in the classroom, who really have some collective authority to think about what their own goals for learning, to what end is their education for, and ways that feel kind of freeing, right? These like classroom spaces that feel freeing for both teachers and students. African-American studies has been offered in many schools, high schools especially, since the 1970s, but there's really been this really inspiring renewed interest in ethnic studies. So the state of California just passed this really large mandate that every graduate of California public schools by the, I think, 2028, 29 will have to take an ethnic studies course. Similar work is happening in Oregon, in the Boston public school system. In Connecticut 2 years ago, we passed a law was passed that will offer an elective in Black and Latinx studies to require that it be offered in every public high school, and it's going to be implemented next year. New laws in Connecticut to encourage the teaching of Asian American studies and Native American studies. So all of this is kind of, get this into the mix for what ethnic studies is. So I'll just say there that it's not just diversity studies, it's not multicultural studies, just the study of cultural difference. It is not just for students of color. It's not just kind of like knowing your history. Actually, students who identify as white also desperately need this education and learn from it and can grow from it. It's like central to their development as well. But in terms of this particular class, certainly any teacher considering teaching the Black and Latinx studies class at the high school level, I think would find lots of material here. Teachers wanting to incorporate any part of Native American studies, again, Black studies, Latinx studies, Asian American studies, across the curriculum, lots of resources to help you think about how you would approach that, or even offering at your school, again, at any level, a kind of elective in ethnic studies. So all of those are possible. I'll also say there could be teachers in specific courses, visual arts, music, life sciences, earth sciences, English language arts, history, social studies, economics. I could all imagine kind of conceptualizing a unit within the existing curriculum that you offer that helps center some of these practices and principles of ethnic studies. And that includes mathematics, theater, second languages, just a range of things. And we'll look at lots of examples of how this works. People who have taken seminars that I've led in the past are really welcome to apply to this and hopefully join. Almost all the texts are going to be new. We're really going to be reading from scholarship in ethnic studies and education studies. So a fair number of essays actually written by teachers where we get to think about how they constitute and pull together curriculum units. We're going to think a lot about pedagogy, the kind of how-to, and doing lots of work to share examples of pedagogy that we develop that connect with our students as well. Thinking about the institutional context of these classes. So we're not just isolated, just teaching our one subject, isolated from our colleagues, but actually how this work shapes departments, how it shapes buildings, school systems. There's been this transformation in the leadership of the teachers union in New Haven Public Schools. That's very much about thinking about the role that teachers and educators play, not just in their classroom, but broadly in our community and social life. So people with interest in that will have lots to kind of dig their teeth into. We'll have a fair number of guests via Zoom talking about what ethnic studies looks like in their particular school districts and classes across a range of places. And just the very last thing I'll say, is that, this is like a really, really stressful time. It's stressful for me, like so many of us. And we can't, the thought of like enrolling in a seminar is yet another drain on our energies and faculties and possibilities is hard. So I'm hoping that this seminar, like many, seminars associated with the Institute, becomes something that's actually a source of optimism and sustenance and kind of collective possibility, something that connects us together rather than feeling like another obligation we take on. So Jason, that's it for me. And then I'm happy to answer any kind of questions.
Dan, thank you very much. And I just wanted to point out, yes, there's a lot going on, and we're all very well aware of that. And I think the Institute serves as an oasis for many of us. Yeah. It gives us that chance to reach beyond our classrooms, to grow for ourselves. Part of why I do this is a rather selfish reason. It's for my own personal development. Yeah. But the other part is also professional too. So it's a wonderful blend. And I think that those of us who come here to do this year after year, or for those of us just starting, are looking for that type of enrichment, and especially in the area of ethnic studies and anything to do with race and power structures and everything else like this that's going on, all these things that are juggling together. You answered a lot of the questions that I had up here by covering it. But I did have one that maybe would have a little bit more clarification. Sure. You mentioned going a little bit beyond when we talk about ethnic studies, especially in the STEM fields. And this question was from a STEM teacher. Yeah. And is wondering, what more would we be covering in this seminar, and how could I go beyond preparing a unit that goes beyond the contributions of people from different ethnic groups in STEM?
Yeah. So first, I just want to say, just to your earlier, point, I think that's exactly what I so appreciate also about the space that the Institute has created, is really recognizing teachers as not just like professional, but as like creators and thinkers and learners as well, versus kind of like functionaries. And I think that so much professional development is like, do this, don't do this. And so opening up spaces for educators to do that. So I just want to echo that. And that question is so important, because ethnic studies isn't primarily at all about contributions. So I'll give like maybe a couple of examples in STEM fields. There is wonderful work happening in earth sciences that thinks about how we teach the basic concepts in geological sciences about plate tectonics and volcanology and oceanography, but not as if it's isolated from histories of exploration, colonialism, extraction, imperialism, and not because we're like imposing it, because those fields of study and knowledge actually can't be separated from that. They can't be separated from the transatlantic slave trade. And so work that's led by really, really advanced, both folks in higher education and teachers doing that. Wonderful work in genetics and in biology and the life sciences, to think about, many students bring ideas about race and inheritance and ability into the classroom. And then we say we're going to discuss, Mendelian genetics. And we kind of like, no one wants to talk about those dominant ideas about race. So we really see these as great opportunities to kind of revisit and examine those. So what I'll do in these cases is share with fellows examples of how colleagues and at other sites are doing that work in those disciplines, so they can see and then figure out where they might bring these kind of frameworks to their own curriculum unit.
So it sounds like a great approach, giving those examples as inspiration and leading points from there. Sounds like a good answer to that question, definitely.
Yeah. So, and I would say the same thing for, math educators as well. It's not just the content, but it's also, I'll say like, we do a lousy job generally in turning math. It could be a subject that's beautiful and dynamic and complex for everyone, right? The joy of math, into something that sorts people and imagines that people have preordained kinds of abilities, like you're good or not good at this. And that's how many students experience it. So the really interesting work in ethnic studies and math education actually lays claim that math can be beautiful for everyone, and thinks about approaches to pedagogy and curriculum that kind of invite people into that framework.
Wonderful. Dan, thank you very much.